You're in the rant hole where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of those by becoming one. This one is for Alex the Pyro, who wants me to rant about webcomics and share any reviews or recommendations I might have. Now, I got really into webcomics back in 2003 when they were, I think, probably at the height of their relevance because it was a lot easier to make money on the internet back then. You could just put a banner ad on your site and actually make some money off of it. So people would make their own websites, host their own comics, and if it got popular, make some decent money. I remember reading all of Sluggy Freelance. I remember reading all of Mega Tokyo. I remember, what is it, Van. There's like one where his name has 3 V's in the title, which was published by Tokyo Pop at some point. Oh God, what else did I read? Oh God, what was that one? There was this one pixel art comic that fucking... I can't remember. It was this like grimdark fantasy comedy pixel art comic. I'll have to figure it out. All I remember is at the end of the first arc, there's a gigantic panel of like a giant thing punching another giant thing, and it says something witty. So if anybody remembers that, let me know. Anyway, that was like my favorite probably from back then, but I don't remember what the fuck it was called. It was like Adventurers Guild, something like that. Might have been the name of the comic. I don't remember the name of the site. Anyways, back then, like, most webcomics would start off as just like a 4-coma newspaper kind of thing. Like, Sluggy Freelance, early chapters are just, you know, just little 4-panel guys with usually some kind of nerd humor. You know, Penny Arcade is obviously like one of the most famous older webcomics. Or like, which I never really got into. I never got into... What was it called? 8-Bit Theater? Is that the one with the, like, Final Fantasy characters? Never got into much of that stuff, but, like, a lot of the webcomics I did like were ones that would start off as more of just a jokey, one-off page kind of thing, and then eventually develop some kind of ongoing, potentially epic narrative. So, for instance, Mega Tokyo. It starts off just being a gag comic about two nerds. One guy is like more of a Western RPG gamer, and the other guy is like an anime otaku nerd, like a visual novel guy from way back. Like, Mega Tokyo is crazy because of the fact that it was like referencing visual novels before anyone in the West fucking knew what those even were, if they weren't like a diehard, otaku with knowledge of Japan. But in any case, these guys... there was originally 2 guys who, like, the characters are based on, who had this comic, and it's, you know, more of that gamer humor kind of thing. But eventually the one guy took over, the other guy left, and it became, like, this deep emotional story that draws a lot from, like, key visual novels in particular. You know, feels kind of like Clannad, which was, like, the biggest influence on it, and but with adult characters. So it was really unique in a way, in that it presents this like anime drama and art style, but with these characters who are older and more robust than most of what you would get from anime. I really enjoyed that back in the day. I've got like 6 volumes of the actual physical release. And the Mega Tokyo forums were how I got into subtitled anime. Like, that was how I found out about, like, you know, stuff. Of course, this was before Crunchyroll was legal, so, like, that's common knowledge now that you can watch subtitled anime from Japan. Did not know that before Mega Tokyo forums, late 2006. But, like, and I've been reading it for years by the time I even ventured into the forums. But, like, Sluggy Freelance I remember enjoying, and again, that one with the Adventurers Guild. I don't know if that one holds up, because it was one that, like, again, it starts as like a goofy gag, like, pixel art comic, and then evolves into this, like, you know, much bigger fantasy story with lots of violence and crazy shit that happens. It was known for its, like, insane tone shifts, where it was, like, mostly comedy, but then there'd just be, like, these extremely violent parts that were crazy. And then, like, when that one wrapped up, then the author did, like, a bunch of... He, like, kept trying to launch different stories, but he didn't ever get very far in any of them, I think. Like, he just kind of lost interest. None of them were as good as the original, in my memory, at least. I don't know what he's doing now. But, over time, I kind of lost interest in webcomics. I mean, I remember I used to go to, like, websites that would just have, like, a huge list of webcomics, and I'd just go through and click each one and see if they were good, and usually I wasn't that into most of them. And I know I tried to create my own a few times over the years, never with any success. Like, never even getting to the stage of there is something to show people, you know? But, over the gap of like 2004 to 2008 or 9 or whatever, in that time, like, you know, traditional internet advertising was proven to be like just not worth it. Like, advertisers gradually realized people don't generally click on banner ads. People are afraid of them because they usually lead to viruses or some kind of bad shit, and they don't leave any impression on people. People just ignore them. So it stopped being worthwhile. Advertisers stopped giving out nearly as much money for that kind of shit, and that whole format of like have website, put banner ad on it pretty much died. And especially with the social media age where nobody's even going to websites anymore, doubly died. So, like, in the newer era, webcomics, I mean, they've exploded. They're everywhere. You can fucking throw a rock and you'll hit a webcomic. And I've seen countless webcomics, but I don't really care to read most of them. Like, a lot of webcomics feel like they come from whatever community they're trying to appeal to, rather than just being like someone having an idea for a webcomic, uploading it to the internet. It's usually more like someone's kind of in the comic sphere. They're trying for like a certain style that is, you know, reflective of what other people are doing and like trying to be a part of a community. I see way more of that. Totally uninteresting to me. But I do know some other good webcomics. Cucumber Quest, if you want a really gorgeous artwork. It's one that Devu was a big fan of, that he introduced me to through a physical book of it. I think maybe it was Ben who had the physical book. I don't remember, but I read a bit of Cucumber Quest. Enjoyed that. Way back, there was this one guy. Oh fuck, what was it called? It was Clone.anime. It might still be the name of the website. So if you search Clone.anime, there's this one dude who's been a serious webcomic artist for a long time, but I never read any of his serious comics. I read Nana's Everyday Life, the infamous elfin lead, ultra-depressing comedy about an armless, legless lolly dying in an alley, basically. And also his Cardcaptor Sakura thing, which is just about the main girls of Cardcaptor Sakura and also the cast of Gunslinger Girl just being insane, hedonistic, murdering psychopaths. And I love all that stuff. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, definitely. Maybe it was Clone.manga. Yeah, I think it was probably Clone.manga, not Clone.anime. But anyways, unless I said that last time and forgot. That guy's done a whole bunch of other shit. I haven't read any of it. His artwork's pretty good, though. Obviously, Homestuck. If you consider Homestuck to be a webcomic, which most people do, I personally think of it as more of just a multimedia experiment. Like, to call it a comic is pretty misleading. So yeah, but Homestuck is one of the best things that's ever happened. So I absolutely recommend you read Homestuck. Well worth your time, and it'll take a lot of it. But you know, you could read it in 2 weeks of nonstop reading. But it is an epic. It has everything. It has everything. It has literally everything. Everything is in it. I love it a whole lot. Dinosaur Comics. I was reminded of that because of Homestuck. Dinosaur Comics is a genius gimmick where this comic is literally just this one 6-panel page of these two clip art dinosaurs having a conversation that like 3 times a week this dude does a new comic of the same page but with different dialogue. And it's amazing what you can do with one image and just changing the dialogue to be whatever the fuck you want basically every time. So yeah, Dinosaur Comics is great. I used to read Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, which is pretty fun if you're just want to, like, you know, like highbrow, haha, sensible chuckle kind of humor. You know, XKCD is also similar in that regard, which I used to read back in the day. Just don't want to miss anything important in my webcomics. That's like most of what I can think of. You know, like I haven't been a huge webcomics guy. Obviously Ben Saint's webcomics as well. I really think of those as more like just comics, because even though they are on the web, most of them are just like one chapter, or, you know, with the Vapors, it's like you get a chapter every blue moon. It's not released like page by page the way most webcomics are. But if you like comics, Ben Saint's Comics, my buddy, patreon.com/Ben Saint, or saintcomics with an X.com, does good comics online. That's all I can fucking think of right now. Oh, and also fucking Hypocrite also does a webcomic, which is based on Homestuck and more in that format, but still, you know, again, if you consider Homestuck a webcomic, Hippos is also a webcomic. Go read that. His is great too. Does anybody else I know write webcomics before I forget? I don't know. Don't read enough of them. That's the ones I like though.